Hello everyone and welcome back to theCUBE's live coverage of KubeCon and CloudNativeCon 2026 here in Amsterdam. We are live, I'm your host Rebecca Knight, and alongside with Rob Strechay. Rob, we have with us a robotic dog.
We do.
This is not every day.
And I got to say, I got to see it in action at Red Hat Commons yesterday, and it was really neat, and I think the technology behind it and what it represents is just awesome.
Exactly, well, to talk more about this robotic dog, we have Johan van Amersfoort, Chief Evangelist and AI Lead at ITQ. Welcome, Johan.
Thanks for having us.
And Jeffrey Kusters, CTO of ITQ. Thank you so much. So, gentlemen, I've got to start with the dog. I mean, let's start here. What is this project? Tell us more about Q9 and what made you both say to each other, you know what this needs? It needs a canine. This is how we bring this project to life.
Well, you know, every now and then you figure out a wild idea, right? So that's part of my job, to figure out a way to create compelling use cases, awesome demos, and show the full potential of technology. And so I went to Jeff probably, I don't know, 6 months ago, something like that. Jeff, I have an idea, we need to buy a robot dog. What was your response?
Well, my first reaction was, what are we going to do with a robot dog, Johan? I was thinking it, but we've worked together for quite some years, and I know when people at ITQ, if they come to you with an awesome idea that's a bit out there, just trust the people and let them run with it. And yeah, I told Johan, okay, you make a good plan, you create a showcase, and show me what the real value is, and well, here it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I love about it is that it represents, your company, ITQ, and I want you to kind of tell us a little bit about ITQ for those who aren't familiar, but it's the fact that you guys are at the front lines of where AI is meeting reality for a lot of this, and I think this, to me, represented the process and the journey that customers are going on with AI. But why don't you tell us a little bit about ITQ and why it is that way? Yeah,
maybe a very brief background on ITQ. So we're a services company. We've been in business for 25 years this year. Did a whole bunch of stuff in the past, but today we focus on mainly 5 things: everything around hybrid cloud, cloud native, digital workspace, AI, and cyber resilience. We operate out of Europe with roughly 300 colleagues now in 8 countries, and we try to help our customers really be successful with technology in all these different domains. And AI is, well, you can see it on the show floor here and at the expo. It's the talk of the town, and I think what this really shows is that it's more than a chatbot. It's more than something you can do with your platform. It's really how do you create like real tangible results using a technology that's maybe for some customers, still a bit out there. They're not really used to seeing what's like the potential, what can we do with it. We're starting to see some benefits now, but again, the work Johan's been doing with the team on the robot dog, it really showcases what we can do. Yeah,
I mean, and again, I thought what was neat is you talked about all of the different stack and what's being done, because I think, and we've been talking about it all day and feels like for the last 2 years, moving from AI to inference to agentic, and what you had to do to get this up and running, and how the different pieces came together, because it's not just all about OpenShift, it's a lot of other pieces that had to come together from that perspective as well.
Yeah, what we wanted to showcase with the dog is we've been doing AI for nearly 10 years now. Like the first couple of years, primarily focused on traditional deep learning and machine learning use cases. And nowadays, like the last couple of years, especially on the conversational AI side of things. And what we wanted to do with the dog is show the full potential of a cloud native platform when it comes to those traditional showcases or use cases where customers are actually training their own model. So from that perspective, we trained a model on recognizing hand gestures, and the idea came from my kids get taught sign language at their primary school, and I don't understand sign language, but there's a way of building a case for that and let AI do its thing. So we trained a model to recognize those gestures, And one of our lead developers built an API to talk directly to the dog. So that in that case, the dog can recognize a hand, recognize a gesture, and in return, if it's recognized, it'll do a trick. And that kind of shows the potential of a platform like OpenShift, where we have the capabilities of running a full training pipeline out of the box. Honestly, you don't have to do a lot of things to get it up and running. And having such a platform to your disposal makes the journey from 0 to 60 really a reality. We're at KubeCon. We are a strong believer of everything open source, and we're a member of the CNCF. And if a customer honestly has the time and the manpower and the financial power, it's a great way, like the CNCF landscape is a great way of navigating through it, choosing the right bits and pieces to get a similar platform done. But the reality is that a lot of customers don't have that time and want to see an ROI as fast as possible. And that's also where the second use case came from. So the dog has its own LinkedIn profile. He's called Q9 the dog. You can search him on LinkedIn. And what he's been doing this week is, kind of blogging about his adventures. So he takes pictures around the show floor, sends him to a large language model running on OpenShift, and in return we get a completion back with the picture, a little bit of a story with his own opinion, and he posted it on LinkedIn. And it's been so far, to us it was a really fun showcase to build, but now it's kind of the talk of the town.
Yeah.
So will the dog, and we should say the dog is in sleep mode right now.
Yeah.
So that's why he's so restful and peaceful. Will he blog about being on theCUBE, or is that not?
Yeah, well, after the recording, we'll take a picture of the CUBE booth, and we can definitely let him share a message on LinkedIn about that. Yeah.
I love it. Well, as Rob was saying, that underneath this is a pretty serious cloud native stack underneath this very entertaining robot dog. What are clients' reactions when they see what the possibilities are with this proof of concept?
Yeah, one of the first aspects of the challenge that the customer faces is, I want to do something with AI, but I have no idea where to start. And this is kind of where our approach focuses on. We run use case assessments to kind of define what the business problem is that we can solve and what the tangible result would be out of that. But we also determine what the maturity level of the customer is. Like, are you already doing AI? And if so, where in your organization? How does the governance structure look like currently? Do you have a product owner who focuses on AI, or is that like a side hustle for someone? And if we all have kind of all of those, if we have that information clear, then the next step would be to work with the customer on building that platform. But like I mentioned, you don't want to wait 18 months to get that platform up and running. So yeah, having such a cloud native platform at your disposal that covers everything lets us, when we have those use cases identified, quickly spin up that platform and then go continue to innovate with the customer. Build a community at the customer to involve literally everyone who does something with AI, and that could be someone of HR, for instance, to work together in a team to build out more use cases. Because one thing that we learned from the last couple of years is that as soon as AI becomes popular, a platform doesn't scale linearly, it scales exponentially because everyone wants to benefit. And that's how we build those platforms as well, with that exponential scale in mind.
And so when you look at this and you approach a customer's challenge, and to your point, their use case that they have, because I think it is, and I'm going to trademark this term, but the return on inference, not ROI is now return on inference, not just return on investment. Because how do you get what you're investing in and out of inference? And I think it means different things to different customers based on their use case. When you look at, because you guys had a very opinionated stack, and I loved it. I did. I took a picture of it. I loved it. I think it's a really common sense way, to your point, because when you look at the CNCF landscape, I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of different projects going on. In fact, we've had some of them on, and it's like, okay, where do you overlap versus these others? I mean, you guys use Argo, you use Kserve, you're using some of the other ones, probably KubeVert in there as well, and some of the other things that are as part of, that are upstream and downstream then is, things like OpenStack Vert and things of that nature. When you go and bring that stack to a customer, you've vetted it out. And how many degrees of freedom have you built into that architecture?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, because if you look at, well, I think the whole expo here is a good example of it, because in the end it's all smart engineers you need to convince. And all these smart engineers, they all have their own convictions and they all have their own beliefs and their favorite tools. So we try to be as flexible as we can be, because we cannot support the entire landscape. That's not possible. Also from a managed services perspective. So we do have our opinions, and we try to negotiate with the customer on, okay, are you really that keen on using that specific technology or that specific solution, or could we showcase how our preferred tooling works? And most of the times that works, just having a good dialogue with the customer. But in the end, in all honesty, that is, I think, the biggest struggle with the open source ecosystem, that you need to convince so many different people of your opinionated stack. And that's part of being here. Yeah.
In one of the latest projects that we're involved with, the customer fully trusted, and that's kind of a dream project. The customer fully trusted us to work towards an outcome. So their starting point was, we have a certain technology in-house, we have certain challenges, we want to solve that challenges, and one of the challenges they faced was, in the current environment, it takes roughly 6 to 7 weeks to spin up a new Kubernetes cluster. And there were all like tons of reasons, and in that case, they just asked us, like, what would you do to solve this? And for a really long time, we stayed away from the technology push. We talked about outcome. We determined the maturity of the different platform engineering teams, and ultimately found the right technology that would fit their needs. As a result, like, we're now in the next phase to actually deploy the platform. It is OpenShift-based, and our estimate is that we're going to go from 6 weeks to probably 10 minutes.
Wow.
That is massive
That's an
value.
order of magnitude different, to put it mildly.
So is that standard operating procedure in terms of how you work with customers? You're chief evangelist, you are CTO, the conversations that you're having with organizations at various points on the spectrum in terms of how invested and how deep they are in AI and how much they've deployed it across their organizations. Is that generally how you work? We have an outcome here, then we'll talk about the technology.
Yeah, so in an ideal workflow, we have like 3 phases where we work with customers. It's consult and the vision, where we strategize, build a plan, and really build a business case and such. And there the outcome is, in an ideal situation, a clear roadmap, where we want to go with the customer, which outcomes we want to realize. Then the second phase is build and implement. So obviously implementing technology, but also taking care of, let's call it optimization of the IT teams that are supporting the new technology. And finally manage and improve, and I always like to say that, okay, that we can take some of the heavy lifting away, that's a plus. But for me the important part is always the improvement, because we're not a company that keeps customers or help customers keep the light on. We really want to continue innovating, build awesome new use cases, and ideally flow back to that first roadmap we created, and then take on like the next challenge. And that's like how we ideally work with customers. And in practice, in reality, there are multiple like entry points in that approach, because not every customer needs a full roadmap. Sometimes they just need support, expertise from us. But yeah, that's how we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think to kind of bring it back around, I mean, when you start to look at the journey that your customers are going on, it's about how do they take what their brownfield is and have their reinvent it, right? And how do you then take it into bringing AI into that? Because a lot of people aren't going to be large language model builders, right? They may take a model, enhance it like you did for Q9, and teach it certain things about their use case. But then they also have to put it into production and run it and things like that. How do you help people, not just with the day 0 where they're iterating and ideating, but when they get to the day 2 and they have to understand the performance and the ongoing SLAs that they need to, and SLOs they need to hit inside?
You want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, for a large part, that's our managed services team. So we have a strong MSP business unit within ITQ. But even besides offering managed services, there's also always a lot of focus on enabling the customers and really like upskilling them, because I think in the end it's really, if you look at like the more traditional customers coming from purely virtualization background, most of the times there's a strong like Windows and Microsoft skill set in the team. Then supporting a full cloud native stack, that's a whole different ball game. So we always emphasize a lot on enabling and training and such. We are also a CNCF, a Kubernetes training center, so we help our customers really understand how to do it. And optionally we can support them again in an MSP model, but yeah, we also, it's perfectly fine to hand over the keys to the environment and just support them when it's needed. So yeah, it's a bit of both basically. Yeah.
And I'm imagining they all now want their own robot dog too.
Probably. And it's very confusing because when we're showcasing this, a lot of people on the show floor, they think we're like a robotics company or something like that. So it's,
you could have fooled me, exactly. But it's a really cool proof of concept.
Yeah, one of the things that we are now kind of starting off is taking the dog to hackathons at customers. To kind of inspire them on what the possibilities of AI are. So we implement the platform first, we make sure that all capabilities are in-house, but to understand what the full potential is, we bring in the dog, we give the keys, and help the customer to come up with those creative use cases to get more business done.
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I loved it. Again, going from 10 training runs to 50 training runs, you show people how you get to higher percentages of coverage, and from I think it was 70-some% up to 90-some%, which is fantastic. I think it's such a great learning tool for people to understand that. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Very cool, very Jetsons, I love it. So
cool.
Johan and Jeffrey, thank you both so much for coming on theCUBE, a really fun conversation.
Thanks for having us.
I'm Rebecca Knight for Rob Strechay. Stay tuned for more of theCUBE's live coverage of KubeCon 2026 CloudNativeCon. You're watching theCUBE, the leader in enterprise tech news and analysis.